Why not call it your origin? Why home then? If you
Home
don't feel at
origin
home?
is place of origin. Sure, I can call it that, but I feel like there's also a lot more than it just being my place of origin. Because,
So it is a home to you,
because
in a sense.
it is a home because that's basically where I'm from. I'm a Black Sudanese woman. I have to accept that part of myself. So even though there's so many flaws in Sudan, and like it's it's not the most perfect ideal situation to be at, it's still my home to an extent. However, where I feel at home and what I perceive as home is not Sudan. I hope I'm making sense. I hope I'm making sense.
You a bit of contradiction because you're still using the same word.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So that's why I'm trying to basically simplify it of like saying.
Because sometimes you can be at home, but you don't feel at home. Do you get my point?
But that's what, for me, from my perspective, like, oh, you can be in a house, but that's not home.
Yeah.
So that's more. But when you say I'm at home, and you don't feel like
we could say place of origin. That
yeah,
could work.
yeah, like that's that. I mean, you don't have to feel that way, obviously. Like,
But
if you
there
feel
are
it's
some-
home to you,
yeah,
it's home to
there
you.
are
But
some-
to me,
yeah.
I don't feel like Syria is my home. I feel like it's. Yes, I'm proud of being Syrian. It's where I'm originally from. It's where my parents are from. It's the country of my nationality. I wasn't born there, but I lived there. It's where my family is from. But I wouldn't say that that's my home. Because home, in a way, says something about nationality.
Yeah.
And I'm not a very nationalistic person. I don't subscribe to the ideology of nationality and nationalism. I don't understand why do I have to be... Yes, I am genetically speaking from that geographical area, but why do I have to subscribe to just being that and basically calling that place my home?
No, of course. Like, don't get me wrong. If I had to pick a home right now, because it changes for me every time.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm not gonna lie. If I had to pick a home, it would be here. Let's be honest. This is my home.
Yeah.
This is what I'm most familiar with. This is what I know of a lot, and this is where I've lived a long time. If you were to ask me a couple of years ago, I would say my home is Jordan. Even though I went to India after Jordan, I would still say because that's where I grew up.
Yeah.
I grew up in Jordan. It shaped me, and it's the reason why my life has diverted this way. It's all because of my upbringing in Jordan.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not Jordanian whatsoever. And never once did I feel like, oh, Sudan is my home where I felt a sense of home. But the reason why I feel like Sudan is still part of my identity, it's still home to me, is because I am Sudanese, and I have basically through the household that I grew up in, which is of Sudanese parents, and some of the Sudanese traditional things that they have carried with them from Sudan. When I go back to Sudan, I still see that. It's still home for me. However, it's not something that I, just because, there are some bad things that happened in Sudan or some things that I don't agree with in Sudan, it doesn't mean that I have to essentially cross it out, if that makes sense. Because I realized that when I've left, every time I leave Sudan, I sometimes reminisce on a few moments or experiences that I've had in Sudan. So I think it will forever be my home. I think Sudan is a forever home for me. But what I call home and what I feel like is home is so different. It changes all the time.
Would you... But in that sense...
I hope that makes sense.
Not really, because you're still using the same terminology.
Okay, let me use a different...
I'm not saying... You don't have to make it sense to me. If it makes sense to you, it makes sense to you.
It makes sense to me. Just because since I was born, I've just been on the move. Home is... It doesn't even make sense to me. Like, for me, home is literally... It's just people.
I get it, but for me, when you say, oh, Sudan is still home, would a place that you call home exist, but you still don't want to live there?
That's the thing, because for me, I'm an outcast. I've never stayed in a place long enough for me to be like, this is all I know, or this is how, like, this is what I've been conditioned to. When I go back to Sudan, I still feel a sense of belonging, even though I still feel very isolated from everyone. I still get that connection. I still have a connection to Sudan.
And
you get my point?
Okay, so you're not okay. So you have a connection to Sudan.
Yeah.
Some sort of connection, not 100% connection. You have some sort of connection to Jordan. You have some sort of connection here.
Yeah.
You have some sort of connection to Nairobi, like Kenya. So what makes that's why in my head I'm like, just because you have a connection somewhere does not, to me at least, does not make it home.
Of course not.
And
I wouldn't
for me, it's
I
hard
wouldn't
to imagine.
classify.
Exactly. So for me, it's also hard to imagine a place whereby I have a connection somehow, but I would not want to go and live there, but still call it home.
But see, that's where we differ. For example, India. Okay, I've never once felt like India was home to me.
Yeah.
Never. I know the language. I know the people. I know the roads. I know the streets. I know the cities. I know the places. I know the towns. I know everything about India. You could quiz me on India. I guarantee you I'll pass over an Indian. I've never felt like it was home to me. Ever. My brother, on the other hand, he is pure Indian. Even though he's Sudanese. He's pure Indian.
Yeah.
He belongs there, if that makes sense. And I think that's what's so weird, is that because we've moved around so much, it's like something that feels sentimental to me, I might see it as home, whereas something else that I could have a connection to might feel foreign to me still, if that makes sense.
But
the reason, the best way I can say it is, I feel at home, but I have multiple homes.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
Hopefully now it makes sense.
Yeah, but
I have multiple homes.
I get that. But do you not want to live in your home?
So for me, living, it's not that I don't want to. I would like to live in Sudan. I would love to live in Sudan, but I can't. Because of the conditions that are set in Sudan.
If those conditions didn't exist,
I would live to,
you would live in Sudan.
I would love to live in Sudan, yeah.
Yeah?
I would love to live in Sudan.
So, but we're talking about the conditions of the fact that is like the genocide that is happening. But the culture, the people, the traditions.
I would love to live in Sudan at some capacity. Maybe not with my extended family. No,
just by yourself. The way that you're living in London right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind.
But in Sudan,
I would want
you
to.
Obviously, like, as a woman, you have to confine to the cultural rules, and you have to basically be, obviously, like, the genocide, 100%, that's something that's like hard and it's happening. But the fact that you might not feel safe at 8 p.m., that's not going to go away after the genocide, inshallah, is resolved, right? That's something that it is installed in. It is as a country that is predominated
for
by
me,
men.
it's like, the way I'm trying to explain it, obviously, like, for you to have a home, you don't have to live in it, by the way. That's how I'm perceiving it, by the way. You don't have to live in a home for you to call it home.
But that's a house.
You get my point? For example, Nairobi, Kenya, okay?
Yeah.
I've never been to Kenya, but I still have that element of home to it, which is very weird. Like, when I look at Nairobi, I think, like, oh, that's home. You know, like let's say if for example, like, I leave the UK, I would feel most home in Kenya.
Yeah.
Why? Because that's where my family is. Do you get my point?
Yeah.
So for me, when I talk about home, I don't mean it in a sense where, oh, it's a home where I'm gonna have to live in. Do you get my point?
Not
And also,
have to, but I would choose to live in.
But also, when you think about home, the way you're kind of, I think the way you are defining home, you're defining it as a place, as a destination. For me, that's not what home is. For me, home is more like, it can be food, it can be people, it can be music. That's what home.
But it's a pleasant thing.
Definition is.
It's a pleasant thing.
So what
it's
I'm trying to say
something that
is,
you love.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to say is there's some elements in Sudan that I really love dearly, because as a Sudanese woman, when I learned to know a lot about my culture, there's some things that I just fell in love with.
Yeah.
For example, the way women accessorize using gold. When I have my wedding, I'm going to use the traditional clothing, the traditional gold elements. I'm going to put henna on. This is part of like the Sudanese culture that I love, and I find beauty in it, and that's home to me. You know, it's not necessarily a place. It doesn't mean that, oh, I have to live in Sudan for me to feel at home. Do you get my point? So it's more of like a sense of feeling than it is like a physical location. I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the the way that you describe home is different than I guess maybe most people do, or like I do myself. Just because also, like, I'm not saying that it's a physical space, but for me, home is a pleasant thing. Home is something beautiful. Home is something
like your
that
home.
is
Your home to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though I've never been to Syria before.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing, though. Like, it's something good, and we want good things in our lives.
Yeah, of course.
But for me, like, Syria is not home because I wouldn't, like, I'll visit, but it's not pleasant for me to stay.
For me too. If I'm being honest, it's unrealistic for me to stay in Sudan.
And therefore, I don't know how it could be home then.
But it's still there's still some elements of home in Sudan that I still feel connected to.
Yeah, that's fine, and you should be. There's a lot of things that I feel connected to in Syria.
So the way you're perceiving home is different to the way I perceive home.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, I'm not saying you shouldn't perceive the culture as part of you, or like, for example, that, like, you know, the dresses, the way that things are and stuff like that. That's fine, but that's something different. That's not. To me, that's not home. That's the culture. That's your identity. That's what you would like to be. That's who you identify as. That's how you perceive yourself to be. But that's not, like, you know, that's not home by definition, because home is obviously, like, home is the people. Home is the home is the basically like the food, the music, and everything like that. But when I'm asking the question of, like, Sudan being home, is we're talking about the geographical area of Sudan being home to you. And if home is such a pleasant thing, if home has all of these great qualities, why would you not want to live home?
No, don't get me wrong. I would if all the other elements, the bad parts, don't exist. I wouldn't mind living in Sudan.
But that wouldn't happen.
But obviously, that's what I'm saying. That's why it's unrealistic for me to go like, yeah, I'm going to live in Sudan, because I can't. I physically would not survive by myself in Sudan, if I'm being honest. I would not. Let's just call a spade a spade. But what I've been saying is, I'm not saying like, oh, fully Sudan is my home. No. I'm saying there's some elements of Sudan where I feel like is home to me. You know, I will always feel connected to Sudan regardless, no matter what.
That's okay.
Even when like, for example, when we, and I think the reason why it's so different from me and you as well is because that's just how I was conditioned from a very, very young age, since I was a fetus. That's just how it is. We never had a solid place where we can always go back to. Even Sudan was unclear for us to go back to. Like, if we were like, oh, if we're not here, where are we gonna go? We don't know. We were always displaced. Even right now, technically speaking, I'm displaced. I don't know what's gonna happen if I'm out of this country.
Yeah.
Do you get my point? So I never saw home as an actual location, as a physical place. I saw it more about other aspects. And I feel like the way I defined home is so different from you in that sense. So when I think of home, I think about so many different parts in my life where, just like you said, all the pleasant parts, that's what make it home to me.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand your perspective, but for me, what it's sounding to me right now is that Sudan as a country is not home.
It's not home. However, there are elements within Sudan.
Yeah, but those elements are fluid, Mawadda.
Call home.
Yeah, those elements are fluid. You don't have to be Sudan to be dressed in Sudanese thobe.
But when you're in Sudan, it's so much different.
Of course it's different, of course. But those are fluid things. Those are not rigid things. What's not fluid is you labeling Sudan as home, and therefore somewhere that you could actually be Mawadda.
But all of these things, Mace, all of these things resonated. They came from Sudan.
That's fine.
That's why when I go like, I call Sudan home, is because of that.
Yeah.
Like if like let's say we move as a family, okay, my mom, she has the bukhur, she has all of these are all Sudanese, sentimental Sudanese things that we're bringing with us, and I feel at home because of that. But where did these come from? They came from Sudan. When I go back to Sudan, it's a completely different thing, because you see those things as such a higher magnitude. Do you get my point? So that's why when I go like, oh yeah, Sudan, but geographically speaking, I will not survive in Sudan. Like, honestly speaking, I would not, because I don't know anything. But the things that come with Sudan is what I would call home. And when I filmed my Echoes of a Homeland series episode, I think the first thing I said was, home to me is fluid, because that's what it is. I'm a displaced person, unfortunately. There's no place for me where I can be like, it's so hard for me to imagine, like, even if I bought a house here, I don't think I can geographically be like, this is my home, if I'm being honest. I'll just be like, oh, I have a house here.
And that's why, like, that's fine. I see it the same way. Like, home is not here. Home is not back home. The home is not Syria. Home is not Jordan. For me, I am also like a displaced person. And I don't have a home. The way that I see it is I don't have a home.
But my home is not a fixed location.
But I'm saying I don't have a home within the description of like what a physical space of a home means, not what the fluid definition of what a home to you means, but rather like into like the physical space of like that space that people say, the physical geographical area where people, when they feel homesick, they refer to. When they feel, when they're depressed, they refer to. When they want to celebrate something, they refer to. That geographical space, I don't have that. So when I say like, oh, you know, like there's a difference between the fluidity, my friends are my home. My.
Can I ask a question? Why do you feel like it needs to be a geographical place?
Oh, it doesn't have to be a geographical place.
Okay.
But I'm just saying, if we're using the word, if we are talking about a country, whereby we identifying that country as home, so that implements a geographical place. So in my head, I'm like, okay, so now we're talking about geographical place. We're talking about Syria. We're talking about Sudan. If we're talking about geographical space being home, you didn't say my mom is home, because your mom could move.
Of course.
Sudan cannot move.
Of course.
Syria cannot move.
But
when you say Bakhur is home, Bakhur can move. Food moves.
Of course.
Soap
of course.
moves.
Of course.
Geographical location doesn't. So for me, when you say Sudan is home, in my head I'm thinking Sudan is a fixed area on planet Earth. Does that mean that Mawadda feels at home there, that geographical
it makes
space?
Sense. And don't get me wrong, when I go to Sudan, I do feel very isolated, but there are some instances, some moments where I do feel like home, because of the people, because of those fluid elements that I call home. Because of that, there are some instances where I am in Sudan and I feel like home. But the reason why I go like, oh, Sudan is like home to me, is because it's just so much easier to put into words than for me going like, well, Sudan isn't home to me. However, these elements of Sudan are home to me, because it's too much to say. So it's so much easier for me to go like, oh, I feel a connection to Sudan. I feel a connection to Jordan. I feel a connection to this, to that, to that. Do you get my point?
Let's say Sudan. We take everything that is Sudanese, we put it on Latin America.
Then it's not Sudan. My home, I have a sense of home in Latin America.
So Sudan is still there. The streets are still there. The geographical elements are still there. We take the Bakhur, we take the Sudanese people, we take the culture, we take the music, we take the thobe, we took everything and we put it in Latin America. Now Latin America is your Latin America is your home. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. Like, when you say Sudan is my home, to me, that implements a little bit of nationalism.
If you take everything out of Sudan, it's not Sudan anymore. Huh? You're saying, oh, let's take everything out and just keep the geographical elements to it. No. It's not Sudan anymore. You're taking the people, you're taking the culture.
I'm making an extreme case, right? Like, for example, people who are second generation Sudanese. They were born in Birmingham. There's a massive Sudanese community there. There's the Bakhur, there's the Thobe, there's everything like that. They see that place the Sudanese community there as their home, and it's very, very. People might argue it might be a mini Sudan, right?
Yeah.
Sudan still exists.
Yeah.
Two things could be true at the same time.
No, of course.
Right?
I get your point.
For me, like when I'm talking like, oh, let's take everything out, I don't mean we erase that from Sudan.
Yeah.
We keep it the way it is, but we put it in Latin America as well.
Or you don't have to go far. You can put it here in the UK.
Yeah.
If you like, bring in all the elements of Sudan and you bring it here, I will call the UK my full home. I'll even say my full home.
Yeah.
If I need to.
But that's because you're obviously taking the good parts of the UK and the good parts of Sudan, and you're leaving the bad side of Sudan back to Sudan. So that's why for me, my only issue was the fact because I was not understanding, because for me, when you say a geographical space, a country, borders, and
it's just so much easier to word
it gives a bit of nationalism, and genuinely for me, I don't understand nationalism. I don't understand this, like, oh my god, like I would sacrifice my life for a country. I'd sacrifice my life for a cause. I'd sacrifice my life for people, for a purpose, for the weak, for the children, for the in need, for the people suffering. But just because of the fact that they're this kind of nationality, or just because I only care about those people because they're part of my
from
home,
a specific
because they're from my home, Syria.
Doesn't make
Therefore,
sense.
I care.
Doesn't make sense.
That's something that I just don't understand.
Yeah.
Or people who only get, for example, like people who get offended. Let's say a video that is like a kid being hit comes out, you don't care. Then turns out that kid is a Sudanese kid. Now you care. I don't understand that. I genuinely don't. So when you said, "Oh, Sudan is home to me," that implied nationalism, and it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Like
no, I agree with your point that some aspects of nationalism don't make any sense, and they shouldn't in a lot of contexts. But I'm not saying that I'm going to sacrifice myself for this space or something like that. All I was trying to say is like, okay, where do I feel a sense of belonging? There are some parts of me that feel a sense of belonging in Sudan.
Yeah.
At the same time, I feel a sense of belonging in other parts of the world, all because I grew up in different parts of the world.
Yeah.
And I don't have a fixed state where I can actually call home. But yeah, it took a while for us to get there. But I think now we understood our definitions of home are very different. But yeah, no, it makes sense.
It might not make any sense to other people, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. But yeah, genuinely, I feel like that's the struggle of being displaced, isn't it? Is the fact that like there's no one.
You don't know.
There's no one place. There's no one definition. There's no one person. It's just you're everywhere and anywhere, and you're put in that place, and you're supposed to adapt. But not only that is the fact that like there's certain things that people from our country feels towards a space that they were born and raised in that we would never be able to understand. Even here tomorrow in the UK, we'll never understand what it means to actually fully belong in the UK.
Of course.
That's something that's a feeling that's always going to be foreign to us. We were not born and raised here. We were not born and raised in Jordan. We'll never actually fully understand what it means to belong in Jordan.
I'll never be Jordanian, but I still see Jordan as home.
Exactly, but you'll never understand what the sense of fully belonging to Jordan either means,
true.
or fully belonging to Sudan fully means.
That's the struggle.
Or belonging fully to Syria means, or fully, let's be honest, even fully belonging to being African, because you haven't lived all your life in Africa. Or for me, fully belonging to being Arab, because I was not always in touch with my Arab side or living in Arab countries or like, so there's part of our identity that because of the way that we were displaced and the way that we were moved around, and because we had to learn new languages for that, we will never be full.
The way I see it is, if I had to have a geographical home, it would just be a mix of so many things where I grew up.
Yeah,
that's how I would see it.
But that's not, unfortunately, possible.
Of course it's not, which is why home to me it's never a geographical place.
Yeah.
Which sucks. That's just how that's the struggle of being displaced. But yeah, just wanted to tell you, if you can relate to us, just know that you're not alone.
Yeah.
So many of us third world kids, we third culture kids, we
Displaced
feel
kids.
the same. We feel the same way.
Yeah.
International students as well. You guys probably feel it too. But yeah, you're not alone. You're heard, and yeah, we hope this was insightful. And yeah, other than that, farewell.